What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer Show here on YouTube. I'm Reed again, live from the surface of the sun. That's Dylan up in Michigan, the week of his bachelor party. Dylan, we'll recap that when you get back. That'll be a whole episode. I feel like those always are. But hey, today we're going to talk about a topic that we've been thinking about tackling for a long time. It's actually going to be a 3-part series. We're going to talk about soccer in America. In the professional leagues that call the country home. So according to Ampere analysis, in 2021, soccer surpassed ice hockey as the 4th most popular sport in America. The survey reported that 49% of Americans enjoy watching soccer, compared to 30% for ice hockey. For reference, that number in 2021 was 8% behind baseball. The gap has now grown to 3%. So soccer is 3% behind baseball in terms of whether Americans like watching the sport. So it's on its heels. Baseball's made a lot of changes, so that's obviously a different topic for another podcast. Ironically, we are also
probably on
baseball
another
people.
channel.
Yeah. Ironically enough, our friendship started through baseball. So but
and we've both been converted. So what does that
exactly.
say about soccer?
We have been fully converted, Look, soccer has 5 billion fans worldwide, billion with a B. And it's the fastest growing sport by a very, very, very wide margin in the United States. The highest professional league you can get in America, outside of exports to the German Bundesliga, is Major League Soccer. I know
or Leeds.
Yeah, or Leeds. I know our soccer listeners will appreciate that reference to Leeds in the Bundesliga. But basically, the MLS was founded on the doorstep of the 1994 World Cup. It was kind of incorporated as an LLC in 1993. Its first game was played in 1996. And you'll find throughout this episode that a lot of the milestones of the MLS have been coincided. That's not the right phrasing of that sentence, but we're going to go with it. It's been very closely linked to World Cup years. More on that later. So I'm reading this quote, 30 teams in 29 years. The MLS just announced an expansion to San Diego, which was a bit controversial for U.S. soccer fans because San Diego already has a professional team, albeit a rank lower, that many thought should have just been promoted to the MLS. However, I digress. The MLS has grown to 29 teams. Like I said, they're going to get to 30 in 29 years. The next closest U.S. professional league to that amount of time to get to 30 teams was the NBA at 58 years.
And that was because of a merger, probably. Well, partially because of a merger,
yeah,
too.
Exactly. So,
I mean, they didn't get to 30 on the backs of a merger, but a merger skyrocketed them forward.
Yeah.
Same with the NFL. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, when we've talked numerous times about how quick soccer is growing in the U.S., and you already kind of touched on it here, but I think part of it too is just the growth and the need for new forms of entertainment. The MLS season falls when there's very little going on. Like today, notoriously, my whole life growing up was my least favorite day of the year. For those of you that don't know, or depending on when we get this out, it is the day after the MLB All-Star Game. So there is, in theory, nothing on TV for American sports tonight.
Yeah, there's a thing in America, the dog days of summer when it comes to sporting.
Yes.
Like it's June, July MLB, which nobody wants to watch. And we're kind of in the heat of the MLS season, and we're getting to more meaningful competition rounds of the, what's it called? The U.S.
Gold Cup?
No, the Confederate. What's the
U.S. Open Cup?
U.S. Open Cup. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're long, and it's also when the Premier League's off, when all the European leagues are off. So it is a good time for the season to be. But Dylan, one thing that I want to leave the viewers with before we move on, kind of also teasing our next couple of episodes, is I feel like the MLS is very similar to a Silicon Valley startup company that gets valued at $30 billion and has zero revenue. And you're like,
How are we here?
How are we here?
Right.
Why are we like? Why do we have so much momentum? Why do we have so much perceived growth? And we're going to talk about that. But it is important to note that the popularity of the MLS and the popularity of soccer in America are two completely different things right now. But I do want to go ahead and talk about how the MLS got here. Dylan, do you want to give us a history lesson and make it kind of fun, or do you want me to start?
I mean, I can do my best. The league is not as old as I am, which is slightly.
I mean,
Slightly.
You are old as hell.
When I say slightly, I mean very slightly depressing. And
it's like you look at professional
so.
athletes and they're like 24 and they've got full.
Oh, I've been over that for a while, but
Yeah.
but now we're talking about a whole league is younger than me. Like, yikes! It's a little scary, little unsettling. But like you said, it was formed in '94, just a short while after I was born. Sorry, it was LLC'd in '94, and then actually was started in '96. And has grown exponentially since then. Like you said, we've already got it up to 30 teams, and I think not only I know we're focusing on the MLS, but really the whole soccer pyramid in the last 10 years has grown exponentially as well. You see USL Championship sides, USL League One sides outdrawing previous years, year over year. So there's no doubt at all levels the sport is growing exponentially.
And to piggyback off of that, we need to get these episodes fast because it looks like there might be a big change potentially in the pipeline. Potentially,
and we can touch on that in our third episode of the series,
definitely.
But throughout that time of growth, there were definitely some hiccups. Especially at the beginning, like you kind of alluded to, it did feel a little Silicon Valley-esque. There was, I want to say, they lost almost $500 million in the first 10 years of existence, not of operating, but first 10 years of existence.
Up to like they 04, 05, yeah. It's like close to 400
so they lost hundreds of millions of dollars initially, much like many tech startups do as well. But much like those as well, we've seen the valuation continue to grow and grow. The biggest jump for kind of legitimacy from a business perspective was when Don Garber became the commissioner and brought in Lamar Hunt, who the U.S. Open Cup trophy is now named after, and Robert Kraft to start building expansion teams. In, I believe, the same year we saw the first.
Is the Super Bowl trophy the Lamar Hunt trophy also? Am I just crazy for thinking that?
Oh, wait.
Oh, no, it's the team that wins the AFC is the Lamar Hunt trophy.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it's the Lamar Hunt's also the U.S. Open Cup. We're going to get roasted by U.S. soccer fans if I'm wrong.
That was the second link.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. But from there, that kind of started to legitimize things, seeing these massive sports owners start to realize the potential that soccer had in the United States. And then in that same year, we saw our first soccer-specific stadium, MLS-specific stadium be built in Columbus, Ohio for I believe they were the Columbus Crew way back then. Honestly, I should have started the episode with this. I was not an MLS fan. I'm still borderline not really an MLS fan. I don't have a team. I watch it occasionally, but mainly for gambling purposes, if we're being completely honest. Like today,
which we'll talk about more because that has a lot to do with the growth of the sport.
I got 4 bets out there because, like we said, what else are you doing tonight in sports? Like, I might as well throw a bet on the Columbus Crew over tonight. Like, I don't even remember what I have, but I digress.
Guys,
we need to get him.
We need to get him some help.
It's small units. It's all fine. I'm not really losing any money. Yeah. But the growth continued from there. Again, it kind of legitimized the process, having all of those big time owners and big time sports figures start to buy in.
Which, just to interject real fast, keep Columbus in your head, because we'll talk about that earlier. I'm a little intoxicated. A little bit later. Having to do with kind of cities that have kind of this thirst for professional sports. So Columbus did build the first MLS stadium, and that coincided with these NFL owners being convinced to basically expand the league. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that expansion, and you already alluded to this a little bit, obviously, without a doubt, coincides with the World Cup years. League was formed shortly after the '94 World Cup that we hosted in '02. The league really started to gain traction. We obviously had a pretty deep run into the deep by our standards, into the quarterfinals. So the buzz around soccer in the United States was gaining even more and more traction. And I think a lot of times, at the end of the day, most successful sports owners are elite businessmen. You can look at them as sports fans. You can look at them however you want, but the best owners know how to conduct business. And whether you are a Arsenal fan and absolutely, or not, whether you're an Arsenal fan and you absolutely hate Stan Kroenke because he just sucks all of his money out of Arsenal and puts it into U.S. fans, like, I digress. But like, to become a sports owner, you, for the most part, have to be a very successful business.
You got to be rich as shit. You got to have.
And how do you get rich?
Money.
You got to be, and you got to be smart with your money to get to FU money. Even if money's like handed down to you, like at some point you had to be smart to get your money. So all of these very elite, smart businessmen kind of recognize the opportunity, and I think we're kind of starting to see that again. Maybe this time it's more athletes with Messi coming over, but I don't think there's any coincidence that the United States again is seeing a big newsworthy story around the MLS coinciding with a World Cup. Not only World Cup time of year coming up, but also it being hosted in the United States. I don't think that's a coincidence.
It's crazy.
We've seen it throughout the history of the MLS, and I think it'll continue.
Messi's still one of the best players in the world, and he's going to be playing against freaking like Minnesota United and FC Dallas.
There is a chance Lionel Messi plays at Keyworth Stadium in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen Keyworth Stadium.
I've seen pictures.
A old, like I'm talking 1920s. It was probably built high school football stadium that is now repurposed to a USL championship. I love it.
You know what it reminds me of?
The dog on the stadium. I think it's awesome.
You know what it reminds me of?
Luton Town.
Also the old Rosenblatt Stadium, the College World Series Stadium in the middle of a neighborhood, very patched together, but just absolutely electric.
Yes.
And
there's a chance you could see a top 5 player in the world play there. And like I'm sure there are, I mean, we see it in the Premier League as Premier League fans. Some of the smaller stadiums, you go there for cup games, and it's kind of crazy seeing Harry Kane lace them up at some level 3 side. Yeah. And it's just weird. But like seeing that,
which Tottenham
with
normally
Messi
loses
in the United States would just be absolutely insane. Whether it's in Detroit or some other, the team in Pittsburgh, Riverhounds or whatever the heck they're called.
Sure.
They have a very similar, like, super tight knit community like stadium on the river, gorgeous venue, and like Messi could be playing there in a year. And I just think that side of seeing where we've come from in the MLS to where we were having to, and you alluded to this pre-recording, you're going to ask me like my first memory of the MLS. My first memory of the MLS was the desperate grasp for attention by having penalty shots not be penalty shots the way we see it in soccer, but being hockey penalty shots. Like, I don't even remember what they called it, but it was like breakaway 2000 or whatever the hell they called it.
Crazy, bro.
It was desperate grasp for attention.
You know what? What that would be cool
awesome
for?
To watch.
You know how like the MLS or the MLB has the home run derby? They should pick like the 10 best.
MLS has that.
Oh, do they? Shows you.
They have somewhat like that. They every year they do a competition against Liga MX.
Yeah,
and it's like a skills comp against Liga MX, and it's unreal. It's absolutely electric for anybody who like just enjoys soccer. I don't know 90% of the players playing in it, but like it's awesome to watch. But like that, like the MLS has come from having to pull off those shticks just to show up on Sports Center when that was the be all end all of sports entertainment in the U.S. to attracting Lionel Messi. So it's certainly come a very long way.
It has, yeah. And before we move on to Lionel Messi and the things associated / the things that eventually led up to him coming to the U.S. I do want to say the 2002 World Cup was amazing and a little bit of a downer for the MLS because the US's runs also saw the emergence of some US players on the international scene. And that's when you really started seeing some guys get moves to Europe. I think Tim Howard in 2004 got a move to Man United. Hold on, I've got the Wikipedia page up over here. Sorry, guys. Well, while you're waiting, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all that. Drop us a like. Clint Dempsey, Josie Altidore, those sort of guys, they made moves over to Europe. There you go. So it grew the credibility of the league while at the same time nationally, locally, the league lost a lot of its stars. Moving on to Lionel Messi and somebody very closely associated with his move to the United States.
In more ways than one.
Let's move on to the year 2007. The year 2007 is arguably the biggest year, the most important year, the most impactful year in the history of the MLS. It saw the expansion into Canada, which made it an international league like we see in the NBA, NHL. What are the other leagues? NBA, NHL, NFL. No, not NFL. MLB. That's the league that has a Canadian team. But more importantly, it saw the arrival of one Sir Dave. I don't know if he's a knighted or not, but I'm going to call him Sir David Beckham.
If not yet, he will be.
He will be. David Beckham came over to the United States, and that created, with girls and guys, that created quite the buzz. The financials to get him to come over to the United States are still a little murky, but it basically gave him majority ownership or the ability to create a club with majority ownership without really investing a dime.
The buy-in fee.
Yeah, exactly. That club ended up being One Inter Miami, who now employs Lionel Messi. So 2007, a huge year. Obviously, David Beckham was still a pretty good player in 2007, just like Messi still is now.
He was younger than Messi. He was 30, 31. Yeah. Like he was still probably not quite at his prime for the type of player and his role, but it seemed crazy at the time. I mean,
much more prime than Gareth Bale when he came over as a similar type of player.
Certainly. Oh, certainly. Yeah. And he took a 50-60% pay cut to come over here. Yeah. Like it was a risk, but like you said, it was more than just that actual contract value because he was getting team revenue. I do think he had to buy in to the expansion, but it was like a quarter, if that, of a cost for like if you wanted to go do it. They're like, oh, we normally charge $100 million for a franchise. We'll charge you 25. We'll charge you $25 million for a franchise. So essentially, that's an extra $75 million on top of his contract, and he wouldn't have gone to the MLS if his long-term plan wasn't to establish a team over here. And I think, again, it's an example of elite business people making decisions, putting their faith in the MLS and it paying off. And it's shown time and time again. That's why there's such a, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in our next episode, I'm sure, but there's this like weird feeling when you look at the like Forbes 40 most valuable clubs in the world for soccer, and you see 5, 6, 7, 8 MLS clubs in the top like 40. Like that's weird because it's still probably the 6th best league in the world. You could say maybe it's better than Ligue 1, but is it better than the Saudi league now? Like it's certainly not anywhere close to
you know what the latest ranking actually ranked the MLS? I saw this.
Like talent or financially?
I don't know. I just saw it was ranked 28th.
Well, that's helpful.
28th in something, whether it was a combination of financial and talent or finances alone, which seems low.
28th best league?
I don't know if it was best league. This might be a moot point, and I shouldn't have said it, but
there's no way it's 28th in I mean, not that I can think of anything. Like we're talking the Australian league's probably a top 30 league. Yeah. So that would be wild. But my general kind of thought and point here is like there are
16th.
Forbes is smarter than
16th.
Still seems low.
You got Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A, Ligue 1, which obviously this isn't updated. Eredivisie, Brasileiro, the Brazilian League, Primeira Liga, Liga MX, Premier League,
we
Premier League of
kick their
Russia,
ass in the All-Star every week.
Championship, Super League, First Division A, which is God knows where, Superliga.
Throw this in the bin.
Yeah.
Garbage.
Bundesliga, Austria, Superliga in Denmark, and then MLS at 16th. So,
I mean, there are definitely some leagues there, like the Austrian Bundesliga. There are multiple teams in that league that would win the MLS every single year. But I think
they've also got Liga
as a
MX ahead of the
whole-
championship. Burnley would have absolutely ran train through Liga MX this past year.
As long as they didn't have to play at Liga MX stadiums, yes. I don't know if Burnley and Vincent Company can handle showing up to Mexico City on a Thursday or a Wednesday night and facing that.
Yeah.
But the moral of my point is, like, the MLS, like the kind of growth that they've had is it feels wrong. It feels weird. It doesn't necessarily make sense. But I think a lot of it comes back to the overall success that American sports have had internationally in every other major sport. And I think the expectation is we're never going to pass the Prem. We're never going to pass Serie A. We're never going to pass Bundesliga. We're never going to pass at least Real and Barcelona. Might pass some of the rest of La Liga and certainly could pass Liga 1. But like the expectation is with the Messis coming over, Beckham coming out, like it's certainly in the cards for the MLS to become a more respected and more elite talent wise. And the thirst and hunger for soccer in the United States is certainly not slowing down. And I think that's why you see on those Forbes lists so many MLS clubs valued so high, even though that talent isn't quite on those other levels yet.
Yeah, definitely. To finish us off in this episode, the strategy CMLS is currently employing. So post 2007, more so 2015 to now, what have they done to get to this point? Well, local and regional selection of clubs has been fantastic. They've implemented Austin, Portland, Nashville, Columbus, which was original, but then moved to Austin, then got a new team. All these cities that are either college towns or small towns or big cities without, a whole lot of professional sports teams, at least not the complete, big four sports teams. They brought the MLS there. And I look at Austin as the perfect example. I mean, Austin has absolutely consumed the crap out of Austin FC. It was a great selection for the MLS. They beat the MLB to it. Fantastic decision. At the same time, they've also, got teams in those cities like LA, New York, Dallas, Atlanta, the bigger cities that can support another big league team. So the selection of the placement of these teams and the expansion of these teams, I think San Diego will be another fantastic example. It's been exemplary, really. And then secondly, if you go and look at FC Dallas's Twitter account or any other Twitter account for any MLS teams, it is off the hinges. I mean, it is like something that the Texas Rangers or the New York Yankees would never get away with. I mean, you got, I'll maybe if I'm editing this episode, I'll put up an example, but it is absolutely ludicrous what some of these teams tweet, and their TikToks are fantastic. You can tell they are catering to people younger than us. They're catering to high schoolers, to college kids. And that's,
and they're smart though. Like overall, like the MLS, for how many bad years of business they seem to do, has just gotten so smart. It almost feels like, and not in a bad way, it almost feels like they look at these teams these cities, I should say, putting in unofficial bids or expressing interest to have other sports teams. Nashville wanted an MLB team. Austin
St. Louis also, great example.
Yeah, St. Louis is a great example. Right when they lose their American football team, let's go throw them. I mean, as much as I hate on St. Louis in all facets, it is a very passionate, I almost said good, it's a very passionate sports town.
It's a piece of shit city, but it's a passionate sports town.
They see the NFL take something away. They see the MLB deny Nashville, and they're like, oh, here you go. Are you guys interested in soccer?
St. Louis wanted it.
Yeah, sure.
They wanted it Like you talk to
St. Louis.
yeah, they wanted a MLS
Oh yeah,
team
I mean
bad.
St. Louis is a great soccer city
Yeah.
from like roots. Like
Yeah.
youth soccer is massive in St. Louis, really massive in all of Missouri. So the MLS has been very good in their strategies of it could be easy to look at Detroit and be like, oh, it's a mid market. They have 4 sports teams, super passionate. Let's give them a team. Well, we already have 4. We're mid market. Let's go to Nashville, also in mid market, but we only have 2 sports teams. Fill a void, fill a season. That same thing with Austin, or again St. Louis losing a team, or Portland has 0 professional sports teams in the Big Four. Oh yeah, never mind.
I forget about them too.
Okay, they have one. They have 1 of 4. You're right. I like Damian.
They have
Lillard
one
too.
team that's very forgettable besides Damian Lillard, who sounds like he's on his way out.
They've been very wise in their selections. There have been some that feel like would have made a lot of sense and been great fits, and they've kind of looked at it a little bit more analytically. And I think their expansion is the biggest part of their kind of rise in the U.S. is finding those markets that are hungry and aren't really getting that thirst quenched by their current sports.
Yeah. So now you guys know how the MLS got here. I hope that was an educational adventure into the history of the MLS.
It was an adventure.
It was fun. I think it was a good episode. But this, like I said, this is a 3-part series. Next, we're going to talk about the perception of the MLS and why it is what it is. I had to look at my text with Dylan to remember what I said we were going to talk about next. But basically, we're going to take everything we told you on this episode and then apply it to how we view the MLS, how people in the U.S. view the MLS, and how they view it internationally. Maybe most importantly, how American soccer players view the MLS. So we appreciate you guys watching. As always, do all the stuff I listed before. We'll talk to y'all next time.